Hello everyone! Welcome back to my channel. My name is Crystal, just in case you're new here, and it's almost the end of the year, so I figured I'd go over some of the best and some of the worst books that I read this year in 2019. As the year is coming to an end, the decade is coming to an end. I could even go on about the books that I read this decade, but just for the year of 2019, I have my best and I have my worst books to share with you, and yeah, let's just get into it. In no particular order, I'm going to do my top 5 worst and my top 5 best reads of 2019. So for this year, I read over 65 books, which is a decent amount. I definitely beat my Goodreads goal from last year, which was 50 books. So I read 65 at least. I'm still currently reading a few right now, but I'm not going to count those in this video. One of the worst books that I read this year is These Witches Don't Burn by Isabel Sterling. I wanted to love this book so much, and I went into it thinking it was going to be something completely different than what it ended up being, and I think a lot of people felt that way about this book. I thought it was going to be about Salem witches. I thought it was going to be super dark. It was more on the comedy side of things, and it just wasn't adventurous. The plot wasn't even existent, and I just felt completely disappointed in this book. The cover totally throws you off to what the story is going to be, and I just didn't love it. The next book that was a huge disappointment for me was King's Bane by Claire Legrand. This book was highly anticipated for me. I did receive an ARC of this book from the publisher as well, and I went into it thinking it was going to be my favorite book of the year, and to be honest, it made it to the worst list. I felt that it was all over the place. The storyline took a completely different turn than the first book, Furyborn, and I don't know if I'm going to pick up the third book in the series. So we shall see what happens, but as of right now, I'm not very happy with how the book went. For the length of the book that it was, not much happened until the last bit of it, and the ending was great, I will give it that, but I just don't know if I have it in me to continue with the third book of the Imperium series by Claire Legrand. The third book on my worst list is Madness So Discrete by Mindy McGinnis. This book was really weird. I definitely thought it was going to be something different than what it was. It was like a history book, like a historical fiction book, but it took place in like a psych ward, but then it didn't, and it was just really weird. And the turn of events just, I had to put the book down. I DNF'd this book. It was just not what I thought it was going to be, and I just didn't care. I just did not care about the plot, the characters. I didn't care what was happening. And the fourth book on my list is Wicked Saints by Emily A. Duncan. This was a highly anticipated book for me, and it was compared to Leigh Bardugo's Shadow and Bone trilogy. And I went into this book thinking that I was going to get this epic fantasy that I love with magic and all kinds of stuff, but it was magical. It did have magic, but it was so all over the place, and the characters were not anything that I wanted to be a part of. So this was another book that I DNF'd, and I don't think I'm going to finish the series, or at least try to reread it. I just don't have the time for it, nor the interest for it, and if that's your favorite book of the year, then I'm sorry and I apologize, but that's just my opinion. It is definitely one of my worst, and I just don't ever want to see that book again. And finally, the fifth book on my worst list is An Anonymous Girl by Greer Hendricks and Sarah Pekkanen. I just didn't love this story. It was very weird, and I could do weird. It was just not right, and you could tell that two people were writing the story. It didn't really blend very well as the first one, The Wife Between Us, that they wrote together. So I just didn't care for it. This is another one that I DNF'd, and I really don't care about it. Okay, moving on to the best books that I read in 2019. And first, we're going to go with my favorite book of the year, and that is The Starlight C by Erin Morgenstern. This book took me by surprise because I didn't have a great reading year. Yes, I read over 65 books. But in those 65, there was not many gems. There was not many 5-star reads that I was like, oh my god, this book was great. And Starlight C was unbelievable. This book is for the book lovers out there. It is for the people who love using their imaginations. It is an amazing, amazing story, and I don't even know how to express myself more than that, but it is just such a beautiful work of art, and I love Erin Morgenstern even more now that she wrote this book. I love The Night Circus by her so much, and by reading The Starlight Sea really grew my love for her, and boy, does she have an imagination. The worlds that she built in this story, there's so many different worlds in this story. It's almost like Alice in Wonderland whimsical tale of traveling to these different stories through books, and it's just beautiful and I love it. So highly recommend you pick this up for yourself or for your friend, whoever is a huge fantasy lover in your life, a book lover in your life. This is the book for them. Then next on my list of favorite books is The Institute by Stephen King. This book was so much fun to read. It kind of reminded me of Stranger Things a bit, and I think a lot of authors are kind of banking on the children, science fiction-y, you know, that whole thing. But Stephen King did a really good job with this book, and I really enjoyed it. Although I never read Firestarter, a lot of people were comparing it to Firestarter in the way that Firestarter was thrilling. The Institute definitely was very thrilling. It took about 100 pages for it to get off the ground a bit, just like any Stephen King book, but once it did, you did not want to put that book down. I had it on audio, so when I couldn't physically pick up the book, I was listening to it on my way to work, at work, whatever, cleaning, working out, whatever the case was that I was doing. Whether I was listening to it or physically reading it, I was constantly reading that book. Then next, for my third favorite book of the year, surprisingly, is Ninth House by Leigh Bardugo. Now, I know I said in previous videos that I didn't love this book and it was a big disappointment for me, but that is not true now. I had reread the book last month because I felt like I didn't give it a fair rating. I feel like I didn't give it a fair chance, and I didn't. I proved myself wrong. And that is why I'm so happy that I reread this book, because it is one of my favorites of the year. It is so good, and I think the reason being that I did give it a low rating when I first read it was because I read another book that's on my favorite list, and I read that, and then I picked up Ninth House, and I just was kind of in a slump, and I couldn't pay attention to anything else, and that's my problem. I wasn't paying attention to Ninth House, and I was just kind of quickly reading it because I just wanted to get it done, so I didn't get any spoilers. So I reread the book, and the timeline's not as confusing as I thought it was in the beginning, and I love Alex Stern so much as a main character. I love the aspect of the murder mystery, basically, at this Yale Institute, and I love the secret societies. I love learning about them. I really enjoyed this book so much more the second time around. So if you're watching this and you didn't love Ninth House and all of that, maybe give it a second try. Maybe you were in a slump. Maybe it just wasn't for you at the moment, but rereading it really opened my eyes, like how much I really love the book, and I just love Leigh Bardugo's writing, and I probably would reread it for a third time because that's how much fun I had rereading it the second time around. The fourth book on my list of favorite books that I read this year is Dracula by Dacre Stoker. This Dacre Stoker is, I want to say, the great-great-grandson of Bram Stoker, who wrote Dracula. And this is a prequel to the story Dracula. And I don't typically love historical fiction, but I think I'm a fan now because this book was so good. I love the way that everything was portrayed in this prequel of Dracula, and I wanted to reread Dracula so bad after reading it. I didn't, but I will. And I will revisit this book once more because it was so addicting, it was so enthralling, the writing was beautiful, and I highly recommend it for the Halloween season because it is the perfect vampire novel, unless you want to read it now. But if you like books about vampires and you're looking to fill that void that we've had for so long of books not having vampires in it, and that old legend of vampires, not anything new, you know, no sparkly, shimmery vampires like in Twilight, like the real deal legendary vampires, check out Dracula by Dacre Stoker. You will not be disappointed. It's very low on the radar. It was nominated for the Bram Stoker Award. I don't think it won the award, which I think it should have, because that would have been great, but it was nominated. So it's definitely popular more in the horror community, but definitely pick it up. It's not super bloody. There are bloody parts. It's not super grotesque. It is just great storytelling, and I highly recommend it. And finally, with much thought on this one, a lot of thought on this one, my 5th favorite book of the year is The Toll by Neal Shusterman. Arc of the Scythe. I didn't know if I loved the ending of The Toll as much as I loved Scythe and Thunderhead. Scythe and Thunderhead were amazing books, and I just could not wait for The Toll to come out. And then it came out, and I started reading it, and I started getting bored after 250 pages. I'm like, where are my characters? Where are my people that I'm reading this series for, that I fell in love with in Scythe and in Thunderhead? And they didn't come in until later, but they did come, and the ending of this trilogy was phenomenal. This world is so expansive, and Neal Shusterman really took you into that and really expanded on his world in the final book of the series, The Toll. So you definitely get a lot more new characters, which is surprising in a 3rd book. You would think that it would kind of be the opposite way around, where the 1st book is kind of the world building and the 2nd and 3rd books focus more on character development. But he kind of reversed that a little bit, and we got a lot more attached to characters in the first 2 books, and then the last book is really just building on this world that was created around these characters. I really enjoyed it. At the end of it, I had to think if it was going to be a favorite book of the year for me, but of all the books that I've read this year, and because of how highly anticipated I waited for this, and an overall of the series, it is one of my favorite books of the year, hands down. So if you're someone who invested your time in Scythe and Thunderhead, The Toll is worth your time. It will take you some time to read it, but it's definitely worth reading because that ending was amazing. So that is it. That is it for my best and my worst books of the year. So if I had to pick my worst book of the year, that would be A Madness So Discrete by Mindy McGinnis. And my best book of the year is obviously The Starlight C by Erin Morgenstern. Overall, my reading year was okay. I would give my whole reading year a 3.5 out of 5 stars because I've read a lot of 3-star books this year. Very few were 5-star. Even some of my best books of the year weren't 5 stars, believe it or not. But they kept me entertained, and I enjoyed it. So I'm looking forward to next year. There's not many books that I am anticipating as of right now for next year. But I'm sure more will pop up. But right now, I just want to read my collections of books that I have. I started purchasing more fantasy, high fantasy books. I purchased The Blade Itself by Joe Abercrombie and The Lies of Locke Lamora by Scott Lynch. I'm looking forward to getting into some new fantasy series. this coming year in 2020, so stay tuned for that. Also, I hope you join the Constantly Reading Book Club in January 2020. I have Sandra from Strictly Stephen King on Instagram, and I have Carol Marie Reads from BookTube, who is one of my greatest friends. We started around the same time and we just kind of clicked. They're both going to be my co-hosts for that book club. We have some really exciting things planned for you. So please join us in reading Misery by Stephen King and breaking it down and having a nice discussion about it. Also, possibly a live show at the end of the month discussing the book. So links to that will be down below. But on that note, that is it. That is all I have for you guys today. This might possibly be my final video of the year, and that's fine. I'm looking forward to 2020, and I have a lot of reading plans, but I don't want to tell you guys too much about them, just in case I don't live up to my expectations of myself, but I do have a lot of different things planned for 2020, so I hope you stick around. But on that note, if you like this video and you want to see more from me, please like and subscribe down below. Leave your comments down below, and I'll be talking to all of you guys soon. Happy holidays, Happy New Year, and goodbye!